The world of Splatoon might seem colorful and fun, but it can also be extremely dark and creepy. Thanks to the heroic efforts of the Inklings and Octolings, Splatsville and even Inkopolis as a whole has been saved on many occasions. But what if our fellow Inkling and Octoling saviors failed? What if the evil threats that rose against the world actually won? What would the outcomes be, and which ending would be the absolute most terrifying and worst outcome for the Inklings and Octolings? Now that's where I come in. My job is to try to calculate the losses and the apocalyptic outcome of each villain. We have 6 total stories, but 5 possible negative outcomes that could have came out of these situations. And it's my job today to organize these apocalyptic events from the best possible outcome to the worst possible disaster. And since we are talking about the ending to every main story of the Splatoon series, warning, spoilers are going to be here, including for the recent Splatoon Raiders. And before we get started, we are just about at our goal of 400,000 subscribers. You guys can make that happen super quickly. I mean, we are only about 3K away, so if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more like it, leave a like and subscribe to help us reach our goal. And now it's time to start off with our least disastrous outcome at number 5. Starting with our least apocalyptic bad ending in the entire Splatoon series is the main stories for Splatoon 1 and 2, where our main villain is DJ Octavio. Now, we don't actually have bad ending scenes that Nintendo has given us for these situations, but we can make some educated guesses of what would have happened if DJ Octavio was successful against Agent 3 and Agent 4. If DJ Octavio won, this would undoubtedly be the least apocalyptic event that would happen, because it wouldn't even be apocalyptic. It would just change the tide of things. And speaking of tide, they were actually friends with the Inklings for the longest of time until the rising tides forced them to battle it out in a giant turf war, forcing the Octarians underground as the Inklings reigned victorious. It was kind of just a survival of the fittest situation. So the Octarians losing the battle were forced underground, along with the Octolings, and Octavio just wanted a better life for his people. Because of this, propaganda was spread across Inkopolis that the Octarians and Octolings were just evil, bad creatures. I mean, after all, he's really just a DJ that leads his Octarian army, and he never was really trying to do anything to harm any Inkling that I'm aware of. Well, that is outside of trying to harm Agents 3 and 4 and kidnapping Captain Cuttlefish and Callie, but he would never hurt them. The only main issue here is with DJ Octavio kidnapping the Great Zapfish. This would suck all the power from above land, where Inkopolis and the Inklings reside. So what would happen if DJ Octavio won? Well, for one, the Great Zapfish probably would never have returned, at least until the Octarians and Octolings made their way above ground. They'd probably wait for all the power to shut off and for them to be the most vulnerable for the Octarian army to strike. I still don't think Octavio would have hurt anybody though. If anything, he probably would just forced every Inkling underground the way the Octarians and Octolings were, and Octo Valley would now be Squid Valley. And all of that Octarian propaganda would now be Inkling propaganda. It really would have just flipped the story, where now the Inklings are the underdogs underground, where Captain Cuttlefish is leading a Splatoon to try to stop the Octarians above ground. DJ Octavio would then be the new idol above ground, and Callie and Marie would now be underground artists the way DJ Octavio was. But possibly the worst thing that would come out of this is instead of the Octolings being tortured by Commander Tartar's experiments, it's now the Inklings. Where maybe now the Inkling Agent 3 and the Octoling Agent 8 now swap places. Overall, the same casualties will happen, but just on the opposite side of things now. But overall, DJ Octavio taking control wouldn't have necessarily made anything super worse for either side. It would have just drastically changed how the Inklings lived. But don't worry, because we'll be returning to the story of the Octo expansion and Commander Tartar pretty soon. DJ Octavio's reign would not have been great for the Inklings, but at the end of the day, everybody's still living, everybody's still flourishing, just in different manners. But what if things got slightly more dire for both the Inklings and the Octolings? Imagine you were just hanging out, checking your feed on your phone one day when out of nowhere you were teleported within a digital matrix within that cell phone. You awaken in a weird grayscaled world that looks like a strange dystopian version of where you live. And the only way out is to scale the Tower of Order, battering crazy creepy creatures the entire way up. This is exactly what Agent 8 had to do with the help of the idols Pearl and Marina. But what if Order, which we now know as Smallest, actually won? Well, during the final boss battle of the Side Order DLC, we actually get a glimpse as to what could have happened. The world of Order was originally planned to be a way for those sanitized by Commander Tartar to regain their memories, until a bug took over. This bug wanted to bring everybody from the real world into this gray-scaled world, so pretty much anybody with a phone or anybody at all could have been sucked into this digital world. And that's exactly what Smallest wanted, was to create a perfect world of order, where pretty much it's a world of nothingness. Everybody would be stuck in the Matrix. Now, we don't know the full extent as to what this could have been like, but we know a lot of people already sucked into this world have had their memories turned into pallets, so everybody would be in the Members pretty confused and wondering where they are, who they are, and how did they get here. Now, there's a good chance that Agent 8 and some others could regain their consciousness thanks to Marina, the one who actually made this world in the first place, was able to hack it in order to allow Agent 8 to complete floors and track down Smallest. But it looks like for a quick moment, Order had complete control. It was able to freeze everything and everyone. So once again, it's really hard to say what this could have meant for everyone. Is everyone now completely frozen in time in a digital world? Would Order use everyone that's in the Memverse as puppets and create his own world with them, where you're not in control anymore? It's kind of hard to say, but thanks to the extreme vibes of all the characters, yeah, that's literally how they got out of this. Even if they did get stuck in here forever, there's a good chance that they could have regained their thoughts and who they are, no matter how many times Order tried to shut them down. Sure, this is not the same as the outside world and they'd be stuck in a digital false world for eternity, but they would probably never age and also never perish. They would just probably never be able to experience the outside world again, and it would just be dull and boring in here for the rest of eternity. Some would probably even wish for death, just because being in a dullest, boring void for eternity sounds awful. You would just want it to end. So even if Order 1 and the grayscaling did take place, it wouldn't be all truly awful. There wouldn't really be casualties, but it would probably take a while for everybody to regain their memories, and they'd be stuck in this Matrix-like digital Memverse for the rest of their lives. Living as a slave in a digital matrix or being frozen in time forever definitely does not sound great, but it's still not as worse as the other three we have on this list. At least if we go with the theory that the inklings and octolings will constantly have an ongoing vibe, so they'll never completely freeze up. Well, at least not like this possible next outcome. Mr. Grizz had one goal in the main story of Splatoon 3. To turn all life on planet Earth into mammals. Now to do this, Mr. Grizz will rain down fuzzy ooze from space all over the entire globe, turning everybody into furry, creepy creatures. This would then turn the globe itself into a giant fuzzball floating in space. Now, if anyone comes into contact with fuzzy ooze, not only do you become a fuzzy mammal, but you are immobile, completely paralyzed, unable to move. And with this stuff raining down from space, it's inevitably going to hit almost everyone on Earth. Now, although this isn't necessarily life-threatening, this can render you motionless, being stuck, paralyzed, lying on the floor as a fuzzy creature. Now, there could be a chance you just lay there until you eventually die off, but if you look at the Octarians from the main story, once they're covered in fuzzy ooze, they're almost in the control completely of Mr. Grizz, so Mr. Grizz could even control you. So it seems like it's almost a loss of free will if you get touched by this fuzzy ooze, which is also very similar to how Order was trying to control everybody in the Memverse. And unfortunately, I don't think having good vibes is going to be able to save you from this one. Now, I'm not sure if this stuff can spread on its own. Based off of the final scene we see in-game, it looks like still part of the globe is untouched by the fuzzy ooze. But I'm sure slowly over time, the ooze would cover the entire globe. Now sure, some inklings and even octolings could go back underground where the Octarians lived for so long and maybe take refuge in Octo Canyon or Octo Valley while this stuff happens above ground, but I'm sure the ooze would also make its way underground as well, as it did all over the inside of Alterna, which was a buried dome underground. Now, the only creatures that are probably able to withstand this are the Salmonid, because Small Fry, your Salmonid buddy in-game, is the only thing that can actually come into contact and even eat this stuff. So perhaps the Salmonid now become the superior race, although I'm sure it wouldn't last long, because Mr. Grizz has already hired inklings and octolings to work for him, unknowingly, in order to take out the Salmonid and collect their power eggs and some golden eggs, so he'd probably create his own fuzzy, mind-controlled inkling and octoling army in order to work for him and fight these guys off continuously. And the best part is, he wouldn't even have to pay them. So the end of the world would probably be one last final battle between Mr. Grizz and his fuzzy army and the Salmonid. And who knows, maybe the Salmonid have more of a chance than we might previously thought, especially with things like the Salmonarch and other mythic Salmonid creatures that have spawned over the years. I'm sorry, but if the Salmonarch is also immune to the fuzzy ooze, I don't think Mr. Grizz stands a chance against this thing, even with a full army around the world. So yeah, a Mr. Grizz takeover would not be good for most of the entire animal life that's now on land. Outside of the Salmonid, everything else would probably be paralyzed fuzzy creatures laying around and forgetting who they were, or to being forcefully enlisted into Mr. Grizz's mammalian army against an army of the Salmonid. It's hard to say for sure what that outcome would look like, but it is easy to say that many casualties would result from this. But with only 2 more possible bad endings, this is where we start to get into some extremely scary territory, at least for the inklings and octolings. How do you properly judge what would be the worst apocalypse? Are we only focusing on is anybody left on Earth or the status of Earth as a whole? Or are we focusing on the main characters of our story being the inklings and octolings? Mr. Grizz and his fuzzy war against the Salmonid could wipe out a giant chunk of the entire globe. So you could say that could be one of the worst situations to be in. Or we could focus on the inklings and octolings the way I decided to here and say the war against the Salmonid could be equally as worse, completely wiping all marine life off the face of the earth outside of the Salmonid. At the end of Splatoon Raiders, our heroes, the Mechanic and Deep Cut, end up finding a creature of mass destruction at the Spiralite Islands. That is the Salmonarch, a creature that's been growing in power for 7 generations, unleashes his reign on the globe, causing Salmonid to invade every major city and infrastructure above ground. The Salmonid have one goal, to follow the Salmonarch and literally invade and take over, yet destroying every creature on Earth. They show no care, no remorse, and no mercy. Not only are they angry savages, but they are furious, especially thanks to the inklings and octolings unknowingly helping Mr. Grizz take out armies of probably millions of Salmonid over the last couple of years. They will not stop until every inkling, octoling, and sea life creature is completely and utterly destroyed, leaving nothing left but the Salmonarch and his followers. It's already quite insane that the Mechanic had to take out these giant hordes of crazed Salmonid by himself, but could you imagine 10 times the amount of Salmonid, the entire Salmonid species, all at one time invading Splatsville and Inkopolis, the entire world as a whole? I think everyone would be wiped out in a matter of days. And that's not even discussing the Salmonarch. He alone would level buildings, structures, everything that the inklings and octolings have created over the years. And it would be like a zombie apocalypse for the inklings and octolings. You can't even hide underground. We've seen that the Salmonid can be way, and I mean way deep down there, as far as 1,000 floors right now. There's no hide, there's no escape. You might be able to buy yourself and others some time by digging deeper and deeper underground, but eventually they will catch you and they will find you and they will destroy you, leaving nothing left but a superior Salmonid race that now rules and dominates the world as the new apex species. I'm sure the inklings and octolings at home could put up a really good fight, but if they lose, it's absolutely over. And if we're simply going by the scene that we are giving in the bad ending, it doesn't look like they're going to win, especially with a giant Salmonarch laser possibly hitting the mainland, destroying everything in one blast before the main Salmonid army can even get there. There'd only be one winner of this outcome, and that's the Salmonid, leaving the world in complete ruin and decay. A Salmonid takeover would make for a horrible outcome for so much of the surviving race on Earth. Sure, maybe a small resistance force of past agents and other warriors could come together, but with the Salmonarch, other mythid Salmonid, and their entire army coming over all at once, and with little prep time, I don't think anything could stand in the Salmonid's way. Well, that is except for one final thing. All these stories and bad endings all have one thing in common. One group of organic life still flourishing on the earth, in one way or another. The octolings taking their turf back over the inklings. All life being brought over to a digital matrix. A world full of mammals. Or perhaps a world full of salmon. But what if the world in its entirety was completely stripped of organic life or free will completely? Allow me to introduce Commander Tartar. Commander Tartar was an AI constructed and left behind by humans in order to carry on the human race's findings and knowledge. It was to pass this information on to the next superior species. But one thing that his creator, the professor, probably never expected was for it to go completely rogue, an attempt to mind control and wipe out the rest of the superior species, being inklings and octolings. For years, Commander Tartar has been kidnapping and experimenting on unsuspecting octolings and octarians. He's been using a method of mind control called sanitization, because he deemed these new creatures, the inklings and octolings, unworthy of the earth, and that he would now create his own perfect species, wiping out or mind controlling every other existing one on the planet. He would fire a giant sanitized laser at Inkopolis and probably Splatsville and everything else in its path in order to completely sanitize the entire globe. If you stand in his way, he attempts to kill you. So it's either die or be a mindless slave. Just another pawn in his game and his master plan. Just like with the Salmonid scenario, and possibly an even more likely one, this would be like a zombie apocalypse. All the inklings and octolings, friends of each other, family, have now been turned against each other, now into mindless zombies that are hunting down every inkling and octoling that still survived. I could see inklings, octolings, and all marine life taking refuge in far off areas or deep underground to try to hide from these implications, but they'll probably all eventually be tracked down. I mean, as smart as Commander Tartar is, which is pretty much a supercomputer in a lot of ways, he's able to pretty much create and make anything at his own disposal, probably even devices to help track these guys down. He might just be a telephone, but he's an extremely smart telephone, and he's capable of crazy things. And sure, a Salmonid army invasion would be tough to deal with, along with a Salmonarch, but could you imagine an army of highly skilled, highly trained Splat warriors / agents that are mind controlled from Commander Tartar? This battle would be nearly impossible if certain characters get mind controlled, like the idols, DJ Octavio, and all the agents. I mean, you've seen the Inner Agent 3 fight. That was no joke. And that was just one agent that wasn't even mind controlled yet. Making them mind controlled and even giving them new abilities from Commander Tartar's crazy ideas could be absolutely devastating. The only possible outcome would be if slowly a resistance was able to take out the main leaders of this brainwashed army, like the agents, and bring them back into reality and start forming them as part of the new rebellion. Now, there is a good chance that the beam isn't successful here, and it doesn't cover the entirety of the globe, meaning the home of the Salmonid. And perhaps the Salmonid army is still a thing. Also, considering the fact that they can live and dwell far underground, they could survive all of this. It would then be a massive war against the Salmonid and Commander Tartar. But if Commander Tartar still has his statue and the giant beam and his giant sanitized army, I don't think the Salmonid would stand a chance. Unless the Salmonarch can take out the NILS statue, I don't think there's a chance that they could win. Plus, the statue would probably already mind control the Salmonarch from just one shot as soon as it rises up in the air. Commander Tartar would inevitably win with flying colors, completely destroying and mind controlling every creature, the inklings, the octolings, even the Salmonid. He would finally be able to create his perfect world, the way he sees fit, leaving nothing but ruin, destruction, and an ancient past of inkling and octoling history, stripping the earth of natural life and restarting life for a second time. All 5 of these different outcomes would definitely be tragic for someone, but we're talking from starting with the octolings taking over instead of the inklings to complete worldwide domination from sanitization. With every new story inclusion for Splatoon, we get yet again another villain with yet again another maniacal plan to take over the world. It seems like this series as a whole is one giant turf war, with everybody fighting for control of the world. But the only question that remains is who's the next to attempt to take control.